We talking about sports, get ball.
What it do, baby? Yeah.
Welcome back to another edition of the number one podcast in your headphones, Prem Brulee. We're back again, and this episode I am joined by my big brother Vish again. Welcome back, Vish.
I can't believe you keep having me back, man. It looks like the people love to hear the brothers chat about stuff. So love to be back.
Yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, it's brother bonding time, because why wouldn't I want you on here? But also, it's around March Madness, and we're used to running a bracket pool. So now, with that bracket pool retired, we have all this time on our hands.
It's true.
So
That's very true.
Figured talking basketball is appropriate for us.
We're usually like awake right now anyways, answering text messages, sending bracket invites, and making sure things
blowing
get
up
going.
people's phones. It's like it's like the one time a year I would talk to some certain people. But anyway, well, if you listen to last episode, you know we're moving onward and upward. And before we continue with this spicy episode, a word from our sponsor. This episode of the Prem Brulee podcast is brought to you by Babcock Supply Co. They offer custom handmade items like pocket squares and bracelets to leather products you get to customize yourself. So whether you get a wallet, belt, a watch strap, an Apple Watch strap, a toiletry bag, or even a purse, you get to pick the color of the leather and the color of the stitching that comes on it. So go support my dude Blake. Get the fresh gear and the compliments that come with them. Find out more by following Blake on his Instagram at Blake_Babcock or by visiting his website, BabcockSupplyCo.com. That's Babcock as in Babcock. I met Blake through you, Vish. I'm happy that he's sponsoring this episode. It's a brand I can vouch for, just like last week.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like about time that Blake sponsors this podcast. It makes a lot of sense.
I've been trying. I've been at him a little. All right. With that, we'll start our Yaffammered off with March Madness. It is upon us. The tournament is happening after a year off, and this version in 2021 is all in the state of Indiana. I think it was advertised as Indianapolis, but it's pretty much a greater Indianapolis region from what at least these first round of games is. But they are doing the whole bubble thing in the state of Indiana. So 68 teams are going to be in that state for a few weeks now. So here we go. I mean, a couple things before I get your take and your thoughts. Like we said, we have some time to go through these. Gonzaga is the overall number one seed. No surprise there. They're basically unanimous first ranking in every ranking, and they've stayed there all year. The other number one seeds were Baylor, Michigan, and Illinois. The number two seeds, and these correspond with the order I just gave you the one seeds. Iowa is the two seed for Gonzaga, and then you have Ohio State, Alabama, and Houston, respectively, in each of those teams' brackets. As for conference alignment, shout out the Big Ten. They got 9 teams into the tournament. 9 out of their 14 made it to the field of 68, including 4 out of those 8 that I just named being in the top 8 teams, so very impressive. A few notes on Gonzaga, your number one overall seed. They could be the first team since the 75-76 Indiana Hoosiers team to win a title and finish undefeated. So if you have Gonzaga in your bracket, you are saying this is the first time in a long time that a team has gone undefeated. They would need to, I think, take their 26-0 record to 32-0. So with that, I'm going to get some of your thoughts. Vish, I'll let you go first on the regions, which one you think's toughest, which one you think's easiest, and then I'll take a stab at it myself.
Yeah, I think one of the big points is really the 75-76 Indiana team that has gone undefeated. Is the last team to go undefeated and actually win the title. I mean, we've seen teams since, like Kentucky and I think even almost the Illinois team, but they got upset by the Buckeyes at the last game of the year a few years back. So, but, in terms of the toughest region, I think it can go many different ways. Michigan's region, they have a lot of hot teams right now, not just 2 through 4, but, they could potentially have an 8-9 matchup, especially with LSU, who played really well against Alabama. And so that could be a very tough matchup for a team that is missing one of their best players in Livers. And so, I think that's a tough region. But even if Michigan's missing Livers, I wouldn't really rule that way. And so I would even, look at Illinois as being one of the hardest. And a lot of teams can come out of that specific region. You look at Oklahoma State with Cade Cunningham and just, him being probably the number one pick, right? And some really hot teams. I mean, what do you think? I just, it can go so many different ways, and then we think one way going into it, but I think the Zags certainly have it the easiest, but I think it's so difficult to go undefeated the full time. I wish they would have had a loss. It would have made their region all the more easier.
Yeah. So definitely the easiest is Gonzaga's. So even looking at the matchups, Gonzaga has played the 2, 3, and 4 seeds in their own region this season. And they've won by at least 11 points. They beat Iowa, Kansas, and Virginia all by 11 or more points this very season. And those are the other top seeds in their region. So there really would be no excuse. Obviously, this is a one-and-done tournament, so anything can happen on any given day. You could be shooting ice cold, and the other team could get hot out of their mind. But Gonzaga, on paper, I think has the easiest region. As for the toughest, you brought up the 2 regions I was considering because you mentioned like Cade Cunningham for Oklahoma State in Illinois' region. Even Tennessee feels like the best of the 5 seeds. But I think my answer is Michigan's region because not only I know you kind of went over briefly their higher seeds, but Alabama and Texas are the number 2 and 3 seeds respectively. Yep. They are red hot. They are very popular Final Four picks. I'm sure everyone's seen by now. Like the experts are very high on that being the region because it's popular not to have all 1 seeds make the Final Four, and that's usually the region people are taking. Those
even if you're looking at the first 4 matchup with Michigan State and UCLA, I mean they're blue bloods. Yeah. Perennial powerhouses, but they have coaches that have probably been there and some players that are used to playing in some big games. So, you have that team that comes, one of those teams that come out of that have to beat BYU. You even have a pretty good Maryland team from the Big Ten that was probably one of the top teams last year. So again, they have what it takes. And then Georgetown, again, that Cinderella story, which is weird to say about Georgetown, but again, they are super hot coming in, and we're used to a Big East team, like UConn and Kemba Walker's team a few years ago that just seem like they're running the table because they got hot at the right time.
Yeah, it's right, and it's perfect to go into it in momentum, and then that's a perfect segue. I wanted to talk a little bit about 12-5s because there's such a popular upset pick, and Georgetown's one of the 12 seeds. So I did a little research on, it's popular when you're filling out a bracket. Everybody talks about the 12-5 upset and needing at least one of them. So I've found some history behind it. In the past 40 years, only 5 times has no 12 seeds won. So those happened in 1988, 2000, 2007, 2015, and 2018, where all 4 or 5 seeds won. So every other time, at least one 12 seed has won in the last 40 years. It is more likely that, in fact, the nature of this is it's more likely that 2 12 seeds win over 0 12 seeds winning. And also, there's almost the same odds that 3 12 seeds win as there are odds that none of them do. So when you're filling out your bracket, if you haven't already, it's something to consider. People say it all the time, but I never really did the research, or maybe I do it each year around this time. It's worth noting that you are way more likely to see 2 12 seeds win than 0. So if you don't have any upsets with that 5-12 matchup in one of your 4 regions, maybe circle back and see which ones are popular.
You're looking at the 12-5 matchups, and Villanova went through, like, they stick out like a sore thumb with Gillespie just for the Wildcats being out. It's just a huge heartbreak because I think him being in for Villanova, Villanova's probably a higher seed to begin with, but they're also a perennial, like, hey, they can actually go far and make some upset picks and stuff like that. So it just kind of stinks for that. But again, another matchup to really look at. And I also like 4 and 13 as well. Typically they play one another right in the second round. And so it's something to, if you're like, hey, I don't really know about this team or this team, take the upsets. Who cares? It's fun. It's fun to root for the upsets.
And it helps you if you're in a bracket pool and you call an upset that nobody else did. That's a point or two that nobody else is going to have.
Yep.
All right. Let's move over to the NFL. There's been a lot of free agency moves, but the number one move that caught the most headlines is that Drew Brees is retiring. He spent most of his career with the Saints, I think all but 5 years. He was drafted by San Diego. We all know the history there. Brees finishes as the NFL's all-time leader in career passing yards at the time of his retirement, and second all-time in touchdown passes and completion percentage.
There's also a stat that I want to throw in there for our listeners. He is a 100% always standing for the national anthem.
Yeah, it's very important that, he and Myers Leonard want you to fucking know that, by the way.
Petty alert, petty alert, petty alert.
From the bottom of my heart, I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
So Brees will work for NBC. He has already announced that he will be calling Notre Dame football games alongside Mike Tirico, and he will be a studio analyst during Sunday's Football Night in America show. As for the Saints' plan at quarterback, they did re-sign Jameis Winston to a 1-year deal. It is worth it can be anywhere from $5.5 million up to a little over $12 million, depending on incentives. Obviously, they signed Taysom Hill to a big contract before because, for whatever reason, Sean Payton loves him more than anything in this world. Even when he had Drew Brees, the first ballot Hall of Famer, was wasting time with Taysom Hill. Don't get me started on that. But obviously, I think most people are going to be like, hey, yeah, fam, the Drew Brees retiring. He's like broke ribs, punctured lungs. Like, he's had a rough go of it the last few years. But let me get your yeah, fam, or not him retiring overall. And then, what do you think the Saints do at quarterback? Is it Winston, Hill, a combination of both?
Yeah, I think it's a yeah fam for Brees. All jokes aside, great quarterback and someone that before he signed with the Saints, it seemed like his career was pretty much over. He had a pretty bad shoulder surgery and he could have gone to Miami and just didn't work out that way. And that's when Saban was with the Dolphins. So it's all these what ifs and could ifs and whatever it could be. But he landed in a good spot to make himself a first ballot Hall of Famer. So congrats to Brees and also already landing a gig. I don't know if he's from, Indiana. He obviously went to Purdue, but it's great for him to be able to call Notre Dame games. I'm sure it's nice and it'll be a little bit easier to not have 17 broken ribs playing a game. As to your question around Winston or Taysom Hill, I really think it's going to be Winston. There's no other reason why they would bring him back. I think that is telling of itself. Taysom Hill obviously signed this gigantic voidable contract. I have no idea even how this shit works, and I feel like I know more about these types of things. But I still think Hill will come in and run some of those gimmicky plays, be in that Tim Tebow type of role. But I think it's going to be Winston's team. They have too many weapons to really try to play around with this. And they still have a division where they can be the winners if they need to. If they can beat the Bucs and continue to do that, they can beat the division. The Panthers are still going to be on the rebound. They're looking for a quarterback, and the Falcons obviously have the 4th pick, and so they're the worst, most talented team in the NFL, it seems like. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm a yeah fan to him retiring. I kind of tipped my hand in the intro when I was presenting you with it. I I agree. I think the Saints got to play Winston, and I'm sure they'll use Taysom Hill in the same manner they did with Brees being quarterback, because, again, Sean Payton has this unreal love for him. I mean, kudos to Taysom Hill for willing to play special teams and all that, just like wanting to be on the field. But Sean Payton's like overuse of him is just baffling to me. I mean, maybe it'll make more sense with Jameis Winston at quarterback, but who knows? Maybe we'll see like a QB by committee that almost never works in college. Maybe he'll try it in the pros. But I think this significantly hurts their chances. Obviously, as long as Tom Brady is playing out of his mind and defying Father Time, that division essentially belongs to them. Carolina seems to be trending in a rebuild. And then, like you brought up the Falcons, I don't know what to make of them. Like on paper, they always seem to be good, but then they always shit the bed. So I think this is the Saints clearly taking a step back. They were in cap hell, basically, and they're trying to get out of it and still spend money. So we'll see what happens, but I think it's Jameis, like you said. All right, one more yeah, fam or not. PJ Tucker, former Rockets forward, has been traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. So the Bucks are sending guard DJ Augustine and forward DJ Wilson to the Rockets in exchange for Tucker and Rodion's Curix. And then there's some exchange of draft picks that's very confusing. It had to do with a off.
What was that name again?
Rodion's Curix.
Who? Cool. All right. Cool.
Yeah. Anyway, the main piece is that PJ Tucker is going to a contender in the East. The Milwaukee Bucks were pursuing him for quite a bit, and they do get, however they choose to use him, they get a pretty effective forward, a spot-up shooter, a hell of a defender, and PJ Tucker to add to their playoff push. So, yeah, fam or not, last episode we did our power rankings. Does the addition of PJ Tucker change the Bucks status in your power rankings? Neither one of us had them in our top 5, but essentially what I'm asking is, yeah, fam or not, does it increase their chances at coming out of the East?
So you mean
PJ
Tucker and Rodion Curix? The addition to the Bucks. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were clear that those two would do that. You know, I don't think it changes the power rankings, so to speak. The only thing that would change it, you know, from looking back at it, I mean, the Sixers were, I think, in our top. I think they were number 2 in our power rankings overall. And with Joel Embiid going out, I think it gives a slight edge to the Bucks because PJ Tucker is just this versatile defender. He's great with the corner threes, just understands how to space the floor, just a great general. And then you pair him with, you know, Holiday and just Middleton and what that looks like. I've purposely not said Giannis, but I think the Bucks are, you know, again, it seems like the cards are aligning for them to have no excuses to win the East. And so PJ Tucker only adds versatility to that. So I think it would change my power rankings for a bit, but it's only just because Joel Embiid is out for a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm a nod of this one. PJ Tucker's a great ad, but if we're asking, does it increase their chances at, you know, coming out of the East? No, I mean, it's still between the Brooklyn Nets and the Sixers. PJ Tucker doesn't move the needle to top either one of those teams. The Sixers, I think, just won the other day by over 20 points without Joel Embiid, so they're doing just fine. I don't see this move paying any kind of dividends. They're just adding another like decent under the radar guy, which, yes, it might help the Bucks gel, but until they perform in the playoffs, I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt. So I'm a nod of this one. Doesn't increase their chances. Is it a good move for their part? Yeah, why wouldn't you have PJ Tucker on your team to add depth to your squad instead of like DJ Augustine? So from their standpoint, it makes sense. But no,
yeah, and see,
I'm a nod.
My thinking around this is if we're removing the Sixers because, you know, Embiid's injury looked pretty scary, and I think we're glad that he's going to be back at some point, but we don't know if he's going to be 100%. But if it's against the Bucks and the Nets, you have PJ Tucker, Holiday, two pretty much locked down defenders going against Harden and Irving. and that puts a lot of pressure on KD. And you can really mix Middleton, any of their bigs with the Bucks, and even Giannis guarding KD. So you have a chance to actually defend the Nets, who are just a huge powerhouse right now. And KD, it seems like he's going to be out for a little bit longer. So there's not going to be much time for them to gel the way you would feel they need to gel in order to beat the Bucks. And that's the only reason why I say the Bucks getting, PJ Tucker only adds to their understanding to not just the intelligence that's going to be out on the floor for the Bucks, but also how you guard the Nets, who we both feel like are the top team and someone that is going to be very hard to beat, especially in a 7-game series.
I mean, bottom line, PJ Tucker ain't fucking solving Kevin Durant, James Harden.
Giannis still has to play out of his mind, and we haven't seen Giannis play out of his mind the same way we haven't seen James Harden play out of his mind. So whoever comes out of the East is still a crapshoot, and I still wouldn't put it past for the Heat to turn it on late.
We'll see. You don't even have to be that great to make the playoffs out of the East. All right. It is now time for You Played Yourself.
I'm petty as hell. And I'm super petty. Here we Petty Le Pew. Go.
All right, first up on You Played Yourself, the Chicago Bears.
The Bears.
I felt a responsibility. I don't know that many Bears fans, but I know enough of them. The Chicago Bears signed Andy Dalton to a 1-year, $10 million deal. Dalton, of course, served as the Cowboys' backup last year, turned starter after Dak injury. The Cowboys did want him back, but obviously, if you're Dalton, why wouldn't you take borderline starter money in Chicago? It was reported that the Bears settled on Dalton after they tried very hard, but failed very hard at getting Russell Wilson from the Seahawks. It was reported that the Bears offered 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and 2 starter-level players to try to get Wilson, in which the Seahawks clearly turned down. Bears, the
Bears.
Why the hell would you put all your eggs in the Russell Wilson basket? He didn't even officially request a trade, and you were knocking at the door of trying to acquire him, and then literally let the Seahawks hang up on you. Like, if you're willing to offer that much, like, offer some fucking more if that's what you were counting every single thing on. And the Chicago Bears still have their GM in place. They're a fucking mess. They're an absolute mess. So you played yourself, Chicago Bears, and I feel so bad for Bears fans. Andy Dalton's not bad, but to go from like thinking you had a chance at Russell Wilson and be like, hey, our plan B is Andy fucking Dalton, like, I get it, guys. I get it.
Andy Dalton and Nick Foles. I mean, it's that trade report of what was offered to the Seahawks. Shame on them, actually. So I think it's a big played yourself to the Seahawks for turning that down. It's a Bears franchise. You just mentioned the GM and the head coach, who are basically on the hot seat before the season even starts. So those first-round picks that you're getting from the Bears, it might not mean all that much in 2021, but 2022 and 2023, if that's what they were offering, they have a good chance to be a top 10 pick, and you can get a great haul for a quarterback that already has alienated himself in Seattle, has called out basically Pete Carroll, called out the offensive line, and he's been surrounded with weapons. It's not like he doesn't have a Lockett or a Metcalf to throw to. So it's just odd that the Seahawks seem like they would turn this down for a franchise that just seems like they always find themselves, one player away from being just the best team, right? From one player away from being the 85 Bears. And, we're almost 40 years away from their last Super Bowl and their last really part to be relevant. So it just kind of sucks for the Bears, but shame on the Seahawks for turning that down for a quarterback that seems like he doesn't want to be in Seattle anymore.
Shit, I disagree with that. I think if you're the Seahawks, Russell Wilson's one of few players that can make up for deficiencies, and that's exactly what the Bears are looking for when trying to acquire him. So if you're the Seahawks, Russell Wilson never said he wanted to be traded, and he's not like drawing a line in the sand like Deshaun Watson. I wish Russell Wilson would open his mouth. So it's kind of a you played yourself to him, because he's been very weird this whole saga. Like, I didn't request a trade, but here are 4 teams I would go to, which one of them was Chicago, which is part of the reason I'm sure Chicago pursued so hard. It's like, if you have a franchise quarterback, no matter what haul you get in draft picks, there's no guarantee you're hitting a lottery like Russell Wilson. He's a Super Bowl champ and a stupid play call away from being a 2-time Super Bowl champ, MVP, almost a perennial MVP candidate, even though obviously he famously didn't get any votes this whole time that we talked about. I don't think you give up a quarterback that willy-nilly. It's got to be a tremendous haul, and he's got to want out. So it's like, if he hasn't officially said that, I don't agree with parting with him. I think that's where you and I kind of deviate from this. But if I were the Bears, I wouldn't hang up the phone.
Really that good? And that's a hot take, right?
Yes.
And I think that's something that we would look at, because when the Seahawks team made the Super Bowl, they had a really great defense. A very incredible defense where Russell Wilson, he had to be a little bit more than a game manager, but to that point, if you believe in the system around Seattle, and I think most NFL franchises would like to emulate what Seattle does. They draft really well. They figure out what players really fit in their schemes and what that looks like. They drafted Russell Wilson, in the 3rd round? And that was right after, I can't remember who they actually paid to be the starter, the perennial starter coming in. And Russell Wilson did beat him out. But who's to say that they can't do that again? And especially with getting a sort of haul from the Bears for what that looks like. I think the way Seattle is positioned right now, like, it would be okay to have a mediocre quarterback, even if that's the worst case scenario, and you're getting this haul as well to fill out what that looks like, because you don't have an offensive line right now. You're in a division where it's going to be very difficult for actually to make any more headway. And on top of that, I think the part that's missing is Russell Wilson has been ironically weird. Before, it would always be like, hey, I'm Russell Wilson, go Hawks. Like, no matter what he would say. And so this is the first offseason where he's getting on all of these different podcasts, these platforms, and he's actually saying like, hey, yeah, I hate being hit. Well, if you're holding the ball, you're going to get hit. Like, that's on you sometimes. Like, it's not on the offensive line. They can't block for 15 seconds while you're running around and doing breakdance moves. So, we'll agree to disagree, but I think it's something where, at the Seahawks level, if someone has already called out your offensive line and players that are not just tradable or whatever like that, you've already created a rift in your franchise. And if Pete Carroll's your man in Seattle, then Russell Wilson kind of called him out as well this offseason. So, he's said more than he has, because he hasn't really ended any of his conversations with "Go Hawks," which he usually does. So I don't know. That's where I'm at.
You're wrong, but
Petty alert. Petty alert.
Hey, it's your podcast. I'll let you get to have the last word. That's where I'll let my younger brother always have the last word here, especially on his own podcast. So
you're damn right. All right. You Played Yourself goes to the Patriot way. Bill Belichick said, fuck you to not paying anything for premium talent like he almost always found himself doing. The Patriots have spent more than $270 million total on contracts this young offseason so far, including $150 million in guarantees. The Patriots are the 6th team in NFL history to spend more than $100 million in a single free agency. And bad news for the Patriots, good news for all of us who love to hate on them. None of the 5 prior teams even won a playoff game. None of those teams that spent that much previous history even won a playoff game, let alone multiple ones, won a Super Bowl, whatever you want to call it. The Patriots did decide to give Cam Newton another shot. No telling if he's going to be the starter, but they spend money on a couple tight ends, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, signed a couple wide receivers. They are spending their cap space very aggressively this offseason, probably more than anyone. So You Played Yourself goes to that Patriot way. There is nothing like seeing Tom Brady win a Super Bowl without you for Bill Belichick to totally change up all of it.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I think part of it is also it's not a new take at all. I think we've seen a lot of the talking heads talk about it, but Bill Belichick is basically openly admitting that he sucks at drafting. And if you even look at what, you can say all you want about Jimmy Garoppolo and how he's supposed to be the next quarterback to take Tom Brady's, place or whatever that is. But, Jimmy G is not really that great. And so you've had this entire time where you've just kind of dicked around, and you've also had Tom Brady.
But real quick, by the way, Jimmy G is do you think the Niners regret trading those picks to get Jimmy G? Speaking of trading for a quarterback?
I don't think so, because I think it's the same way that the Rams are set up, with Sean McVay. When you have an offensive, I'll call it mastermind, like Kyle Shanahan, you can really fit any quarterback in there. But if you have a quarterback that's just slightly above average, not quite, way above average, but better than good, better than most. And I think that's what Jimmy G is, and understands systems and understands all of that. That's what you kind of want. You want that sort of veteran presence. You want that individual that understands what the Belichick way might be. So maybe the 49ers, but I think what they are really looking at is like, why the hell did we give him so much money before he even played a snap, it seemed like? And I think that's where they went wrong, is not giving up so much that they needed to. But for Jimmy G in particular, but the Patriot way, yeah, fuck the Patriots.
Yeah.
They've won enough.
All right. Last but not least, on You Played Yourself, we are sticking in the NFL. We just passed 1 year of the Texans trading DeAndre Hopkins away to the Arizona Cardinals in exchange for David Johnson, a second-round pick, and a sleeve of saltine crackers. 1 year later, the Texans are almost close to down 3 franchise cornerstones.
Don't ever play
with
yourself.
No picks in this year's draft to show for it,
Don't
and
ever
have
play
truly
yourself.
become a laughingstock. I mean,
Don't ever play yourself.
we have some other teams making a play in that category, but the fact that the Texans hold it and that happened so quickly in a year is cause for the ultimate You Played Yourself. We've talked about it so much, but I'll give the floor to you, since you are soon to be, looks like, a former Texans fan.
Yeah, it is so hard to relive this. I mean, I think this was so devastating on multiple ends. I think I resorted to, if we were going to, give up Hopkins, at least get a king's ransom for him, for the best wide receiver without question in the last, few years up to that trade. And just to get a second round pick and a David Johnson. And if you want to say he could be good, he could go back to his form, he had such a shitty contract that if the Cardinals couldn't trade him, that they were just going to actually cut him, because it just was too much to hold him on the salary. So, it's such a sad situation. Adam Schefter had a tweet commemorating, I guess, the 1 year anniversary of the tweet and really what's happened with the Texans since. And I think I'm going to call this might be the first time on this podcast, You Played Yourself on myself. Probably one of the first podcasts that I was on. I called the Washington football team like one of the worst franchises. And I have to call it played yourself on that. It is the Houston Texans, like without question, everything that they've done. And all credit to Nick Caserio right now. It seems like he's making the right moves, but he has just had this gigantic hole that he's trying to dig himself out of. I can go on and on. We can spend, I think, another 20 minutes on this for me to rant, but I just can't waste any more of my breath. I am just going to take another sip of this beer, just say this is what it is, and hopefully be done with this trash franchise in the foreseeable future.
It is crazy how quick things change for them and Texans fans. So, but anyway, we will move on to who you got and what you feeling. And you and I were on the last episode, so a quick recap of what we went over. We briefly covered it earlier. We went over our NBA power rankings heading into the second half of the season and out of the All-Star break. You and I had some sort of combo of, Nets, Lakers, Sixers in our top three. We also added the Jazz and Suns to round out our number 4 and number 5. So it seems like it's heading that direction. We talked a little bit about the Bucks and how they might have something to say about that, but overall, we all know who this is about. We went over the franchise tags that kind of kicked off the off season. Of course, now there are signings going on, a whole lot of moves. We will probably sift through that once those moves are kind of finalized and we can talk about everything in totality. But we talked a little bit about the franchise tags and which ones we felt were impactful, either teams that chose to or chose not to. I talked about the Lions not franchise tagging Kenny Golladay and putting a very good receiver on the market. And you talked about all the safeties that got franchise tagged, some big ones. Marcus Williams of the Saints, Justin Simmons of the Broncos. I cannot relate to having a good safety, so I'm very jealous of those teams for locking those down. On to this week. So, as I said, we're going to probably put a bow on the offseason once the time is right and all these things kind of sort themselves out. There's a lot of dominoes still to fall. But in this short offseason, as moves are starting to become like unofficially official to actually official, your favorite move of the NFL offseason so far. I'm going to go first and then get your take on your favorite move. I personally love that the LA Chargers are spending on their offensive line. They signed all-pro center Corey Linsley, who's a Buckeye, go Bucks, and former 5th-round pick that won a starting job his rookie year and snapped the ball for Aaron Rodgers for years. He turned his all-pro year this past season into a hefty contract, becoming the highest-paid center. He will now be snapping the ball to second-year quarterback Justin Herbert. The Chargers didn't stop there. They're spending more on the offense line. They're prioritizing protecting him. They're doing exactly what Bengals fans hoped Cincinnati would do, and they don't seem to be making moves like that. So I love that. And then the other one was more of like I was looking at some of these moves coming through, and as a Cowboys fan, I was like, I'm not really jealous of any of these moves because a lot of them weren't really exactly needs for the Cowboys, or they weren't contracts that I was thinking, oh, they could have done that. The first deal that made me feel that way was the Minnesota Vikings signed defensive tackle Dalvin Tomlinson, run stuffing, tackle, very good young prospect that started his career at the Giants. They signed him to a 2-year, $21 million deal that was very first-year heavy, so not much of a risk if it didn't pan out. And that was like the first one where I was like, wow, the Cowboys really could have done that contract, and they should have. So what do you got? What was your favorite move of the offseason?
Yeah, those are both really good. My favorite move was something that we've talked about right before on our podcast was Andy Dalton to the Bears. And the only reason why is just because I like to see other fan bases.
Wait, you want to do the honors? You want to hit the sound it?
Yeah, go ahead and sound it. I like to see other fan bases besides myself bask in misery. In reality, I do like a lot of the small moves made by other franchises. Is actually Curtis Samuel to the Washington football team. And, what I called my played yourself on myself, right? Or however that works. But, they're adding not only just two Buckeyes as wide receiver threats, but, adding a lot of options and speed to that Washington football team. And again, that's very scary, I think, for even, your Cowboys going up against, the defending, I guess, NFC East champs as they continue to get better and better.
Fitzmagic, too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and, Fitzmagic slings it around. He knows exactly how to do and what to play. And Ron Rivera, again, a great coach already. Just knows what to do, knows how to use players. So all jokes aside, I know one of my best friends, PJ, he's a big Bears fan. So I feel for him with this Dalton signing and what it could mean, and the QB battle that comes in the camp with Big Dick Nick Foles and Andy Dalton. It sounds
the QB
gross.
battle nobody wanted.
Yeah, jeez.
Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin, both Buckeyes, go Bucks. There's, by the way, nothing fucking worse than when a lot of your favorite players from the college you root for ends up in as a division rival. So the Cowboys having to face now a Washington football team with two starting receivers from Ohio State and two guys that talked about playing on the same team while they were at Ohio State is pretty shitty. So, I mean, good for them. Curtis got a 3-year deal for $34.5 million, so pretty decent little payday for him in a market that's with the salary cap going down. So yeah, I like that move too.
Should you sound the thing right now? Jeff, another co-host, one of your best friends, one of my good friends, he's gonna have to sell his Curtis Samuel jersey. Oh wait,
yeah, exactly. Fucking Jeff, he never bought one. Now he's gonna be like, see, I told you, because he's a fucking jersey snob and he couldn't get the Stitch one or whatever. But I guess he has the last laugh now.
Sorry to call you out, Jeff. Sorry to call you out, man.
Okay, so we kind of put a bow on something we talked about earlier. So let's do that again with our other who you got. And I wanted to give me your Elite 8 matchups and who you think will make the Final Four out of those Elite 8 matchups.
Yeah, it's so tough. We kind of talked about the regions and how it's Gonzaga seems to have the easiest path to the Final Four at the very least. Mm-hmm. So in Gonzaga's region, I'm going with the Zags, I think, over the Hawkeyes. I don't know who else to put, to be honest. Iowa, with Garza, seems like they could make it, but I wouldn't be surprised even if they just kind of fall short. But they have really picked up the defense lately. But it's just, again, it's really hard to see. I think the other area, we've talked a lot about Michigan. Livers being out is so detrimental for their team. Hopefully they get him back at some point, and that's what I'm kind of banking on for my next kind of region. So I'm picking Michigan over Texas. Texas, you talked about a little bit before. They've gotten really hot as of late. Shaka Smart has been there, knows how to coach in the NCAA tournament. It's actually weird seeing him without hair if you've actually seen some college basketball this past season. And the other kind of region, the other regions, I think I would go with some homer picks. I'm going to go with the Buckeyes over the Baylor Bears. I really feel like Baylor could be a championship team. They're really good. They're really well-rounded. They just know how to play, and they've been very consistent year in and year out. The only reason I'm hesitant with Baylor is because they could face a Wisconsin, North Carolina team in the second rounds, and I feel like that would be the hardest spot. So I'm just going to go with, what my heart feels around the Buckeyes. And then really, I think Illinois is obviously one of the best teams, a betting favorite to win the ship this year as well, if you're not picking Gonzaga. But I got to give some love to my cousins, where their alma mater is the University of Houston. So go Cougs. So I'm going to pick University of Houston over Illinois. That's kind of what I have right now, and I feel like I'm pretty set on that. So what do you think, man?
So you got, just to recap, you got Gonzaga, Michigan, Ohio State, and Houston as your Final Four.
Yep.
I am going Gonzaga over Iowa in that West region.
Yep.
In the South region, I am going with Baylor over Ohio State. My heart tells me Ohio State, but they also make my heart hurt with how dramatic they make things. So I think I know too much and have seen too much to trust it, because they find a way to make every fucking game close so maddening. Over in the Midwest region, I have Illinois over West Virginia. I truly don't know what to make of the bottom half of that bracket. I like Illinois to come out of the top, even though I really do I think it's going to be fun to see Ayo Dosunmu and potentially Cade Cunningham go against each other. I love those top tier player matchups, and you'll probably see both of them in the NBA as lottery picks. But in the bottom, I'm definitely rooting for the Cougs. I'm rooting for the Cougs to come out of there. I would love some Big Ten love either. So either one of the top 2 seeds out of that region would be great. And then I'm kind of going. It seems like a cop out because it's the popular way to go, but I'm going with Texas out of the East region over Michigan, and I think I struggled more with who I potentially see in the Sweet 16 matchup, Texas and Alabama, if they end up facing each other, because they're both so scorching hot of teams. So I could see either one coming out of there, and I think this is more a result of hey, I just don't want all 1 seeds, because especially if Livers is back, like you said. If not, Michigan is almost maddening that they're that good, and they have annoyingly size, and they're going to continue recruiting well. They are a basketball school now, by the way. But that's so my Final Four for keeping tabs here. I have Gonzaga, Baylor, Illinois, and Texas. So 3 1s and a 3 is mine. It feels kind of cop out, but that is what it is this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that you said at the beginning of it is all these games are played in Indiana and likely without fans or very limited fans. So, the things that we see on TV, and we get to feel the atmosphere of the crowd and really starting to root for some of these upsets and things might not happen. I think we've heard that, especially from Mark Titus and Tate Frazier, who do Titus and Tate, that it could be all chalk, which is okay, because no one's really going to be rooting for these teams to fall and go down, and there's not going to be fans, going against this squad or whatever it is, and you also don't have the benefit of being in a region. So if we were actually in the West region, it makes Gonzaga really likely to come out. And then even in the West region, a team like Kansas seems to get a lot more love, because you're going to have a following of fans that are going to be going to a lot of these games, and you're not going to have that this year. So it's going to be a little tough. I know we're divulging some of the information that goes into why we make some of these picks, but I think it's just important to lay out for our listeners.
All right. As for what I'm feeling, it is not running a bracket pool this year. I have never enjoyed a Selection Sunday so much. I went directly from looking at the brackets unveiled. First we went from watching Ohio State lose a heartbreaker in the Big Ten title and overtime to Illinois after a valiant comeback. Then I went right into Selection Sunday, and it did not involve me having to open my computer and leave my phone charging because I was blowing up everyone's phone and running a huge ass bracket pool with you. So I am feeling not having to do one. We had a 11 year run running what became a very large bracket pool, and in 2019 we announced that it was our last year, and then I won't say we canceled the tournament by not having the bracket pool, but I won't not say it either. I'm just kidding. It was clearly COVID, but anyway, our last year of the bracket pool was 2019, and then 2020, the tournament obviously got canceled. So it was kind of weird going into 2021 and realizing this is the first time we truly haven't had a bracket pool to run. So I'm feeling that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you joined me, I think really when you probably were a senior in high school. So probably 2009, but before that, I actually took over for one of my other good friends when he was going on spring break for freshman year in college. So it's actually been going on since 2006, maybe 2007, actually, officially for that, actually March Madness. So we had a really good run, and I think we almost got up to 200 people in our pool. So it was hard to like let go. I really wanted to see us hit that number, but I completely co-sign with you, not having to deal with the headache. I think I got a text from a few people today like, hey, you want to join my bracket? And I was like, oh man, I'll just say yes, and I'll send you the, I'll send me the links to fill it out and for the fun or whatever it is. And it's so relieving. It was a lot of fun. I won't lie. One of the cool things that we did do was we did these scenarios. So because we had so many people, we actually paid out top 10%. And it was kind of cool to see like, hey, you might have this championship, but you don't need to root for that if you want to quote unquote make the money,
the most
right?
money. Yeah.
So it was, it's kind of something that I'll kind of miss, but won't at the same time, because leading up to the tournament was just a shit show. Let's just call it for what it is.
You number one podcast listeners that might have been in the pool at one point. We never say never. It's not gone for good, but at least right now we're enjoying not having to run this pool. Maybe a little absence will make the heart grow fonder. So I've been saying never say never. I don't know about you, Vish, but I don't see me getting any less busy, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, we'll see what happens. The people are calling for it maybe one day, but as of right now, no plans, and maybe someone will take the torch and run it themselves, and people won't even think about it later. So
yeah, and the number one podcast listeners that have joined our pool before, if you're looking for something to join, just hit us up, and we'll send you in no harm's way, and make a nice referral to people that are running a pool this year. So
you know what? I'm not even co-signing that because I don't even want to be a middleman. That's going to turn into too much.
Yeah,
it's
there
like,
you
go. Maybe you have contacts from your old pool. No, we ain't doing that. If we're out, we're out. Let us be totally out. You can do that shit. I ain't. People are like, oh, just feel free to tell whoever. No. If people ask me, that's cool, but I ain't offering my middlemanship here because that's just a step below from running your own pool anyway.
This is very true. Well, I think if people are listening to this podcast,
don't ever play yourself. You know,
they can reach out to me, and I won't be tweeting anything out, and they can do all of that. So yeah, you know how to find me. If you don't, then that's shame on you.
You number one podcast listeners considering a bracket pool, just like I'm just fair warning. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for, and what you're managing. We do have plenty of advice for you if you so seek it out. Things we've learned over the years, things you've learned over the years, especially doing it longer. But be careful you don't play yourself. Sometimes it's just easier to join a bracket pool.
This is very true.
All right. Now, let's wrap up the episode. And, we finish each one. Too much sense. Let's hit it. My advice for this week is more of just a reminder. You ever just find yourself hating on someone or something? My reminder is just to check yourself from doing that, because it's very convenient sometimes to hate, but it doesn't mean it's easier. You'll find it's much easier to love on something or support something or just let it slide than focusing your energy on hate. And if you do support something, then you'll find that energy returns to you. So if you catch yourself being that way, it's natural, but try to catch yourself is the point, and try to support things instead of hate on them, or at the very least just leave them be instead of using up your energy to hate on something, because it seems like it sucks energy, whereas showing love just puts energy out in the universe. It's a net positive. So it's my too much sense for the week.
Yeah, I like that a lot, man. In that sense, love you, brother.
Love you too, man. Thank you for joining me again. It was nice to talk hoops and not have to worry about blowing up people's phones and track people down to make sure that they filled out their brackets.
This is true.
That's what we would be doing right now heading into March Madness. So we'll take it.
Games actually start on Friday. So if you've made it this far, they don't actually start on Thursday. They actually start Friday and Saturday, or I guess round one or whatever it's called. And then Sunday and Monday is what it clears off. It'll be a little different. It'll be a little weird.
Which, by the way, we didn't really talk about that. That's a great point. I don't really like it. I always like the Thursday-Friday combo over, it always just felt more weekend-like. It's going to be weird watching second-round games on Monday instead. But here we are. I think it was an effort so that the first 4 games are all on the same night, which they're all on Friday. So here we go. March Madness is starting, and March Madness starting also marks an end to this edition of the number one podcast in your headphones. Vish, thank you again for joining me. It's always awesome having you on here.
Yep, anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and you number one podcast listeners, may your brackets hit on all of your picks. May you win lots of money in your bracket pools, allegedly. I'm not condoning any gambling, but if you are allegedly in a bracket pool with some winnings to do with it, I hope you hit on every single one of them. And that's the type of good energy I was trying to put out in this Too Much Sense. It's full circle here.
There you go.
You know the drill, you number one podcast listeners. Share, subscribe, like. If you hit on any one of our picks, we expect some royalties. I'm just kidding. But I sure as hell would expect a nice review, maybe as a thank you. Anyway, that wraps up another edition of the number one podcast in your headphones, Prem Brulee. For my big brother Vish, I've been Premal Bot, and we'll talk to you next edition.